Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Messiah. I am an associate software engineer at JP Morgan. So our breakout session is essentially called a pitch to switch. It's essentially about upskilling and reskilling within the company. And one thing that's great about JP Morgan is when you get in there, if you've been in the same position, in the same job for 2 to 3, maybe even 5 years, you are actually, you're encouraged to move and do something different in another department, even in another type of job fitting. So it's definitely encouraging for you to switch and change your role and reskill. So I have two of our panelists here, Olu Howard and Sylvia Ruiz. Olu Howard has been with the company for 19 years. He's an executive director. He works in Jersey City, and he is the global SRE global team manager in asset wealth management. Sylvia Ruiz has been with the company since 2016. She started out as an analyst, and she reskilled to data science in 5 Manhattan West. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them the floor to actually give a little bit more of a deeper bio to about themselves. Olu?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for shouting me out and saying how old I am.
Anytime, that's what I'm here for.
So as Chris said, I've been with the bank for 19 years. I've actually been with the bank for 21, but I spent my first 2 years as a consultant. I've been an employee for 19 years. To the point of this particular panel, I have never held the same position in JP Morgan for more than 3 years. So my entire career path has been around reinvention, growth, reskilling, upskilling, finding that thing that's new and interesting that keeps you engaged and keeps you wanting to stay there. And also, to Chris's point about JP Morgan, one of the things that I love about working at that particular company is as long as you are dedicated, as long as you are a good performer, there's never an issue with taking advantage of mobility. My most difficult conversation with my boss regarding mobility has been when mobility has taken me away from them. And then it's sort of like, I love working for you, but... So I'm sure we'll get into more detail during the questions, but that's just a little bit about me. I will say that I started basically as an analyst, so I've worked my way up. When I started as a consultant, I started on a 6-month project to update some printers for Y2K. And obviously I've come a bit since then.
What's Y2K?
I was going to say, this is going to be that
interesting.
afternoon. I see how we're going. All right there, analyst. Say hello.
I'm an associate now.
Ooh.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sylvia. As mentioned, I graduated from undergrad 3 years ago, so I've been at the company pretty much my first job basically out of college, but to the point of JP Morgan really focuses on allowing you to be where you want to be as long as you're performing well everywhere you have been. So I've had 4 different roles within the company in the last 3 years. Part of that was a rotational program in the investment bank and totally pivoted to the retail side of the house where, as a consumer, as a Chase customer, it's pretty intuitive, a lot of our products, et cetera, and then especially in data science, where, if you think about all of the data that is generated by all of us, what we're doing, where we're shopping, what are our pain points, et cetera. Chase then on the other side is trying to analyze that and make our products or services better. And so I sit on 60-something petabytes of data that I get to query depending on the business need. And so that has been really fun, but the journey from being in the business, in the wholesale side, to being in a totally different product line of business in a place where you need to be a lot more technical has been a really interesting challenge and some challenge that I'm glad to have taken. And I feel really supported all throughout with my mentors and the firm as a whole. So I'm excited to kind of talk about that.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Olu. So before we get started with the questions, I'd like for everybody to know, and I'd like to emphasize this, that this is not a discussion. This is a conversation. So you all are included in the conversation. If anyone has questions, if you want to put in input, please raise your hand or just speak up, because we're all in this together. We're just the ones with the microphone.
I think there are mics in both.
Okay,
aisles.
so yeah, so if you want to get up and say something, please just get to the nearest microphone to you and speak your piece. Okay, so the first question, we're gonna start with Sylvia, and so we want to know, how has JPMC empowered you to shift gears and achieve new goals?
Yeah, so that has been my whole story. So at least at the firm. So I guess in two parts. One, when I started, by design, it was a rotational program. So by design, they were kind of forcing me to think of new areas where I wanted to be. So I started in sales and learning what even are our products, why do our customers need it, how do you communicate that? And then it was also a transition from being a student to being a professional, which was a different skill set. And so being kind of forced to think about my career in like a linear way, which I've learned careers are not linear, but kind of to think about that, and then get to know people that I respect and get their thoughts on where should I go next. And so there's sort of an open door policy for upper management. I'm sure you as an ED, your door is always open to junior people to kind of come in and say, I know you're busy, but I want to pick your brain about XYZ. So both by design and the structure of the program, and then second by just the culture of having an open door policy to ask and give advice. And then thirdly, when I was changing from being in the business and doing what a typical financial analyst does, which is basically in Excel all day, to then shifting gears to writing machine learning models, the organization has a tuition assistance program where they basically paid for me to have a data science immersive course for 6 months. So I got to go to school for 20 plus hours a week, and I didn't have to pay for that, which is great. And now they're reaping the benefits of all my knowledge. But yeah, so that was one of many of the ways that I think the firm has helped me.
Olu, how has JPMC empowered you to shift gears and achieve your new goals?
A couple of different ways. JPMC has a strong culture of mentorship. So, starting way back 20 years ago, even then, senior managers would reach out to, new associates, new employees, kind of show them the ropes, show them the way. And again, that open door policy is there. So that really anyone can talk to anyone about, where your career is, where you want to go. And I would advocate that everyone should do that. I mean, I personally have had multiple mentors. Like right now, I actually have 2 mentors. And at each stage in my career, it's about building that relationship, moving forward, finding that person who can help you get to the next level. And JP Morgan definitely helps you do that. So, when I was an associate, I had a VP mentor. When I was a VP, I had an ED mentor. Now I have an MD mentor, and I see another MD mentor over there who I'm going to tap later on. But JP Morgan, that culture of having someone who can really, allow you to learn the lessons that they have, from their experience, what they've gone through, I think is amazingly empowering. And then the other thing that I have found unique to JP Morgan, because JP Morgan's not my first job, it's my 7th job, maybe my last job, hopefully my last job. One of the things that I found that was unique about JP Morgan was just really the openness to letting people explore their intellectual, and for me, being a technical person, my intellectual and technical talents, wherever that took me. I mentioned that I started on a printing project, and I was out with a group of people, and there was an outage, and it was a directory services outage, and I was not a directory services person. I was a printer person, and I'm listening to the directory services people talk, back and forth, and they're trying to figure out how to fix the problem. And I just spoke up, and I'm like, I can fix that. And they were just like, excuse me? And I'm like, I can fix that. Give me access to your console. I swear I can fix this. I swear I can fix this in 15 minutes. We talked back and forth a little bit technically. They're like, go do it. You know, 3 weeks later, I was an employee, and that started my career. And my career's always been that way, where if you talk to someone, if you express interest, if you have a track record of performing, you are encouraged to move in that next level. And whatever company you're at, I would say that you want to be in that culture. You want to be in a culture where people are going to empower you and help you move forward. And honestly, it helps us too. Being on the ED side of it now, I want you to come to my desk. I want you to talk to me. I want you to stay in the company. We're investing in you, and we're getting something back for that. So I think I think that empowering goes two ways. It goes both ways. It's good for us. It's good for you.
Yeah, that is true. So when you started thinking about reskilling, what conversations did you have with yourself and your family, your friends, your boss, et cetera? What were those kind of conversations like?
So I will say that I never talk with my family. I'm one of those people. I believe that we all need a work-life balance. My home needs to be my home. My work needs to be my work. So when my family finds out about things, it's usually like towards the tail end, like, oh, guess what? In 3 weeks, I'm doing this. And they're like, wait, what? But at work, I'm very, very open. If I see a new project coming along, if I meet someone and I'm networking with them and they tell me that they're, like when I first found out about SRE, I just happened to be at a conference and I was talking with someone and they were saying how they're exploring this new Google style of support and doing, configuration as code and software as code. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. I got in a conversation with them. The next thing I know, they're including me on calls, they're forwarding me documents, and I'm catching up with everybody. And then, I got to the point where I could start contributing to the strategy and contributing to the project. And I guess one of the things that I would say is really like you have to be willing to immerse yourself and do the job first. You can't wait for someone to just come and put you in the position first. Every position that I've ever had, I've earned. I've shown that I could bring value to the table first. So I would have conversations like that with my peers, with my bosses, with other people, move forward from there. I don't know.
Yeah, Sylvia, I'm curious on your story because I know that you were for a year and a half. You were in the analyst program, so you basically you firmly planted into JPMC as an associate, but now you're doing something completely different than what you were doing for a year and a half. How did that start? What were the conversations like when you were transitioning to that?
Yeah. So I actually got out of the rotational program early because I found what I actually wanted to do. And that came about as a result of, so I was in one of my rotations in the third, so there's 4. In my third one, I had a project, and the business question was simple. It was, how should wholesale payments as a business position itself given how industries are growing in the world? So really broad-based question, but those are the kinds of questions that I had to answer. And what I started noticing is, across all these industries, pick your favorite, pharma, retail, etc., a lot of them were investing into analytics. And so the questions I was asking myself was like, whoa, what is analytics? And how does that fit with the things that I'm interested in? Because this is clearly where the world is going, and this is also where the firm is going, where we're investing in technology, we're investing in tech talent. So I was asking myself, what does that mean for me as a person starting her career in 2016? And then did some more homework as to, okay, what does analytics mean? What are fields out there that are doing analytics? How are they being deployed across different industries? And that's kind of where I stumbled upon data science. And so I was kind of compiling all of this knowledge into my own headspace. And then once I thought I had some idea, then that's when I went to talk to people that I respect. So I had access to people who were designing JP Morgan's response or leadership in blockchain, which I don't like to say the B word in blockchain very much, but it's a new industry. They were defining it, and some of the people there had gone to where I went for undergrad. So there was some connection there, and I really liked what they were doing in terms of not so much the technology, because that's still TBD, but more of how they were going about that process. So reaching out to people that I thought had a really good way of thinking about the future. Also, the MDs that I had worked under, because they always, back to the whole culture at JP Morgan, they had always championed me. They were always really honest to the point where they could be, et cetera. So kind of being like, okay, I've done all this research. The research suggests that this is where the world is going. This is where I think I fit. What are your thoughts? And all of them were super supportive of like, yeah, go into that field. And these are some of the people that I know in that field that you can go talk to. And then when I found like an educational opportunity, which I think we'll talk about later, then reaching out to, okay, this costs a lot of money. I just started working. How do I not pay for this? Et cetera. So those were it's kind of like a step-by-step process. But I really believe in doing homework before going out to an ED's office because it makes their time worthwhile and it gives them something to react to. So that's kind of how it went for me.
That's an important point. I didn't articulate that as well as you did. But yes, you absolutely have to have some idea of what it is that you want to go to next. If you just approach someone and just say, what should I do? They'll say, go to your desk. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So with that being said, Sylvia, because you were mentioning some advice as well. What other advice could you give somebody who's saying, especially at an associate and VP level, I want to not just upskill, but I want to reskill and go somewhere else. What are the do's and don'ts that you would say somebody should do?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with do's because doing the opposite of that is don't. So the first thing, I think it's kind of, I always harp on this, especially for analysts. I have people junior to me now, which is kind of new. But every time someone comes to me, even if I only have 30 minutes in my calendar, if I see that they come in with an agenda, 10 questions where I am the perfect person to answer, I'll blow my calendar apart. Like I'll give them more time and I'll want them to follow up. And so I think that's true in life. And so I think for me was really helped, and I'm still figuring this out 3 years into professional life, of finding the people that I respect and want to learn from, but doing so much homework ahead of like what their life has been like. LinkedIn is a great resource, and I don't think it's creepy. I will come say, I know that this is your background. This is why I'm talking to you. And then this is my background, and these are the gaps, and these is where I think your advice can help me address these gaps. So coming into an agenda for every meeting, especially when it comes to like my future, because I want them to react to something. And then second, I think I notice myself when I see like an opportunity or somewhere where I want to go next, where like, I don't meet like 90% of these requirements. And I think there's a lot of research out there about how that's different for men and women, where, women will say, okay, if I don't meet 100% of them, then I don't qualify, versus men are like, I meet 20%, so I'm going to do it. And so we can't think that way. We have to kind of just go for it. And in the world of networks, which I've also learned is a big deal in professional life, just reach out to people. And I think a conference like this is a really great opportunity to, the overlaps here are crazy, like tech, women of color and men of color, just like there's so, the Venn diagrams are so, there's so many of them. And so this is a really great place to go meet people. So yeah, expanding network, going in, doing your homework before you reach out to that network, and asking yourself the questions to be able to even have an agenda and ask questions on, and then not being afraid to go for it.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice, because that is the basis of JP Morgan. It's a lot of networking and a lot of connections, aside from your own skill and your own background. Mm-hmm. So Olu, you've been here quite some time. You've upskilled and reskilled some different, maybe more than once or twice.
Most of my life, I think.
But wow. First, you take all the good answers. I don't like you. I would say in building off of what Sylvia said, one, definitely be fearless. Just be fearless. If there's something you want to do, go learn that thing, go do that thing. I think everyone here, just the fact that you're here on a Saturday shows that like you have drive, that you're driven. And I'm sure that, at least the people I've met so far have been all about their goals and really, achieving success. And you can't let yourself get in the way of that. Realizing that in all upskilling, all reskilling, all finding that new place, that's work. That's like having a second job. It's like having a job and a job. And you have to be open to that. And, when you're talking to your mentors, when you're talking to your sponsors, when you're reaching out and you're looking for help, I always ask those questions as how can I? Even in my language, I try to convey both to myself and other people that I realize that this is work and this is what I'm going to have to do. To your point about people blowing up people's calendars, if I have someone who comes to me to ask me for advice and they say, why am I not? Or something along those lines where it sounds like I think I should have this, as opposed to, what do I need to do to get this? One person gets spoken to for 5 minutes and the other person my calendar wipes for. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that in yourself, to be prepared to invest in yourself at least as much as you want everyone else to invest in you. And usually it should be like a sum thing. If you're going to ask 5 people for 5%, you should be putting in 25%. And to not get discouraged at setbacks, not, to your point about careers not being linear. I've taken plenty of side steps. I've given up things knowing that I'm moving in a more strategic direction. And in 3 years from now, I will have everything I had and more. And that's a really important thing to be, not only to acknowledge intellectually, but to be okay with emotionally. Because there'll be dark days in your reskilling journey where I'm looking at Nora, but I can't quite see her face because I'm about to curse and she's going to be mad. But there are some days where you're sitting down and you're looking at yourself and you're going, this is some bullshit. Like, did I just do the right thing? Is my career going in the right direction? And it's you can't let yourself stop there. You just have to keep pushing.
Yeah, that's great advice, because that's not just a JPMC. That's an everybody in every career thing. Speaking of everybody in every career thing, I know fear is our worst enemy, because it can hinder us, right? It can hinder us from going where we actually need to go. And so I'm going to start with you, Sylvia, and this is a real question. What were your fears in even coming to JPMC and then reskilling and rejoining something new? Like, what were those fears that you had? How did you overcome them? And what advice would you give someone else who may have enough fear that it could hinder them?
Yeah. I spoke to one of my, well, I'm always having these conversations, but my roommate, who's also a superwoman, or I don't know about also, she's a superwoman. And she mentioned that every high achieving person has imposter syndrome. It's like you're an achieving person because you have imposter syndrome, that kind of thing, where, you're every step in your journey, you might have these questions of like, oh gosh, I fooled them, but surely these people are going to find me out. And I think I've had that, even going, so I went to the Wharton School for undergrad, and I'm an immigrant. My mom and I came to the U.S. by ourselves. And I was sitting next to people whose great grandfathers were hedge fund managers, and so it was one of those things where it's like, do I even belong here? What does it look like to compete with these people? And then after that, you're at JP Morgan. This bank is as old as the U.S. Like, how do you even, and all of the classmates are, top whatever from whatever insert here good school. So I think that's common, and I think kind of swallowing that and knowing that it's like part of the headspace that you have to actively fight against. Faith is a big thing for me. So knowing that my confidence is not in myself, but in whom I believe in. So that's just like, a Sylvia thing. And that keeps me grounded. But outside of that, it's also like knowing that the person next to me feels the exact same way that I do. And so by like logic, none of us are right, because if we all feel that way, then we're not really competing with anyone, because everyone feels inadequate. And so kind of just like laying that outside, it's sort of like public speaking, where you might be super nervous, but people are actually really wanting to hear you. So there's no reason why you should be nervous. Same kind of logic. So that, and then finding people, this is kind of goes back to like networking and that kind of thing, but finding people who looked like you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and knowing that they did it, and you can do it too, and they can help you understand, like, know what you don't know, and so kind of give you a vision for what does it look like to navigate in a world where you don't understand how to do it. So yeah, I think all of those things.
That was a great answer. Olu, I don't even know if you need to answer. No. But because you have tenor, I think that you should.
All right. I will definitely echo what you said about imposter syndrome, and I will affirm that every high-achieving person has it. I just moved into my role managing SRE globally and setting an SRE strategy, and I definitely am suffering a little bit from imposter syndrome right now. But I think that is part and parcel with stretching. If you feel completely comfortable with what you're doing it wrong. You are not actually pushing yourself ahead. So there is definitely that self-doubt that sits with you. Am I ready to do this? Can I do this? And you just have to answer yes, until you actually do it. I think my biggest fear, and this is definitely an age thing, because I hope every day that the world has changed. But when I came to JP Morgan Chase, it was 20 years ago. It was the Chase private bank, and it was all, it was IT for ultra high net worth people. And, I was walking in, a black gay man, an out black gay man, walking in the mid 90s, and, walking into a room with a lot of older conservative white men. And I fully expected that I was going to walk in and go, hey, and they were going to look at me and they were going to go, no. And what I've learned through the years is like the way that you counteract that fear is your performance. You have to rely on yourself and your skills to show through, and realize, especially in a professional setting, while there may be closed-minded people, in fact, there are closed-minded people everywhere, you're there to do a job, and ultimately it is that job that is going to speak for who you are, and you will succeed.
Yeah, that might have been better. So.
See, I'm glad you had the floor.
So we're winding down at time here. And so while I said that this was a conversation, I do want some questions, if there are any. So please feel free to get up to your nearest microphone and ask away.
Hi. I don't know, you hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, my name is La Fountain, so I have a question for you, the gentleman in the middle.
Hello.
Oh, hello. So I'm a career transitioner. I don't look like it, thankfully, but I was in a career for 16 years, and I decided that I was bored, so I wanted to go back to school and to learn more about the world so I could, be in more of a leadership role. I was already in a leadership role, but I didn't have the skill set to actually do that leadership role at the way I wanted to be able to do that role. So I went back to school, got an MBA in finance, and while I was there, I worked in nonprofit, so you work a lot of hours. I was bored more, so I went to undergraduate to be an engineer, but I was a basketball player, so I couldn't manage both, so I switched to social work so I could do both. And so I decided to go back and do computer science, because the world had changed. Tech was really huge now, so while I had extra time, I figured I can do that.
Right.
I think a couple issues for me was that I'm an only child. My mom's she worked all the time, worked 3, 4 jobs just to make sure that we can survive. So pretty much I would say that I was brought up in that latchkey generation where I raised myself.
Right.
And still to the day, I still teach myself a lot of things on my own. So even though I was a great worker, I worked really well. I moved through the chain very fast at my job when I was young. I didn't know much about jobs, so I was there for 16 years. I got a master's there. Like I said, I moved up as far as I can go. But as I look at it now, I should have been left because I wasn't growing anymore, but I was there just wasting time. So as I listened to you and you talked about how JP Morgan Chase has a great culture of making sure that people switch every so often, which is smart because you got to continue to skill yourself. I didn't have that situation. But I guess my question for you is that how do you think, because I'm going through that now, trying to figure out how my skills from the past sort of affect my skills today. And even though I can talk well, I communicate very well, I'm a good team player, tech-wise, they don't buy my tech because I haven't been in tech for a long enough time to be able to counterbalance the other skill.
Right.
So, I struggle with that. I'm not doing bad. I'm fine with it. I'm working on it. I'm learning every day. But I guess for you, my question is that you were fortunate enough to be at JP Morgan Chase. So you were in a culture that nurtured that. You can't be here in the same job all the time. You have to change. You have to reskill yourself. You have to retool yourself. How do you think that might have changed for you had you not been at JP Morgan Chase and you needed to then switch to another job? Do you think it would have been the same type of easy, or I mean, I don't know whether it was easy or not. That's my assumption. But do you think you would have been able to have the same type of success and transitions the way you did?
Great question. So and JP Morgan people don't hate me. In some ways, I think moving internally is harder than moving externally. JP Morgan Chase, like I said, was my 7th job, and it was my 7th job in a space of 6 years. And one of the nice things about interviewing into a job, I mean, if you can meet the base requirements and you can talk a good game for 4 or 5 hours, you got the job. You know, when you're moving internally, everyone sees you. Oh, that thing that you did to me in 2006 where you were mean to me and you didn't do my project, I'm not going to support you in this. Like, these things do come back up. So there are pluses and minuses on both sides. I will say that I've made your same mistake, where I have allowed myself just to grow comfortable. And then one day you wake up and like everything else has changed around you and you're in that exact same spot. And I applaud you for what you're doing because you are going the hard road. I would I'm just gonna say it would pay off. It's going to pay off. I know it's gonna pay off. I know you directed the question at me, but the experience you're talking about is very close to Chris's.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let Chris add to this answer.
Yeah, so just I'm the moderator, so I didn't really have a bit of a bio, but just as a quick brief overview, I'm ex-military. I was in electronics for 13 years before I decided to go back to school for computer science, right? And so I may not be as tech enough yet, but that's not the case. You just keep learning, keep teaching yourself as you say you do, because that's computer science as a whole. You will always be teaching yourself. Every time something new happens, something new is shown, you're going to have to teach yourself because that school just taught you how to do it, right? So just have enough confidence in yourself to go in every avenue and walk in any room and know that as long as I know what I'm talking about or as long as I could fit in the conversation, I belong at the table.
And speaking as a hiring manager, I will tell you that while there are certain skills that you want in any position, because there's a certain amount of training you don't want to do, your adaptability, your ability to learn counts for so much more. I can teach you anything out of a book. Mm-hmm. I can't teach a person to learn. I can't teach a person to be hungry. Yep. So I would say that when you are going on those interviews, especially if it's like a type of technology that you think a little bit like this, one, be honest. Yeah. Some of my best interviews, someone has asked me, how to do something, and I go, I'm like, but then rather than end the question that way, it said, but, if I'm following my logical experience, I'm going to try and do this and this and this and this and this and this. And I show people that I have a functioning brain. It's always engaged. I can think my way through things. I'm a person you can teach anything, and any hiring manager that's worth working for will recognize that. And if they don't recognize that, trust me, you don't want that job.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go with your question and then yours right after.
Kind of answered it, but
Okay. All right.
we'll go with her first. And then.
All right, great. Go ahead.
So for me, being able to be introspective as well as know how to address my weaknesses is like something that is important to me. So for you guys, for the three of you, what would you say are actionable steps, or at least like the mentality that you would say someone has to be in to be able to like address their weaknesses and then turn it into a positive?
I volunteer to answer.
Go ahead.
I over this past year specifically, because I recently got promoted to ED. So last year I was on my journey of getting from VP to ED. And one of the things that I incorporated into, well, it started as a daily practice. Now it's about an every 2-week practice, but this is what people do with habits, is self-reflection. Whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm feeling, I just take a moment and write it down. Just so I don't lose it. And then maybe a couple months back, I'll go back and just reread that, see where I was, what I was feeling, and usually it's further enough ahead in the future that I can see where I was and I'm sitting in the results of what happened, And for me, that's very insightful for the next time I'm in a difficult situation. I can see where, because it gives you an idea of like how you're charting your own course. And to your point about, getting, working through your faults and building better skills and better habits and generally being a better person, because some of my self-reflections have nothing to do with work, even though that's what I start with. I found that really powerful.
I would just say two things. So if you think about companies, they don't try to be what they're not. So they focus on their strengths. So in business school, you take all these like strength and leadership tests and whatnot. I would take one and say like what to be more self-aware of what are your strengths and like hone in on those. And then for weaknesses, focus on like 2 a year. That's it. And then through life, you're gonna get better and better. And then that's it. Don't try to bite all of it all at once. That's what I would say.
All right. So we have to wrap it up. Did you remember your question?
Well, it's more of a comment. So
Okay.
Olu,
Yes.
I believe you
Yes.
shared. I'll go really quickly. You talked about the sister talked about being stagnant, staying with a company for 16 years, and you believe that sometimes people can do better in terms of elevating themselves by leaving an organization. And most of my success right now, I'm a director of infrastructure. And I've gotten my roles because I've had to leave companies. Mm-hmm. And I've had to do the pitch to switch to try to go from, thank you for calling the help desk, to, level 2 desktop support, to go under your desk and fix everything, to now, right, director of infrastructure. And I haven't been the world's greatest tech, but I think I have always made users feel good, and I've been able to lead. And I've always done agile project management before it was a formal thing. It's like, what are the 5 things we need to do? What's the end goal? Go. But now, I guess, for me, I've always been able to do the pitch to switch to the next company, but it's been with smaller companies. So they have a need, and they believe that I can fill the need. So if I want to work at JP or JPMC, right, or City or whatever, what are you looking for when you look at me and go, she's doing the pitch to switch? What are you looking for? Like, what would you look for to say, she's okay at tech, she's a decent leader? What are you looking for that outside person? How do you get me in?
A lot depends on the role. If you're going for a leadership role, I care that you're smart enough that someone can't BS you. I don't really care about anything else. Yeah, I don't expect that you're going to be doing something hands-on. So I'm really looking at your leadership, your communication. I'm looking to understand that you have a good understanding of the technology, that you're not walking in completely clueless. But I'm really more concerned about you as a person, how you connect, whether or not you're believable, whether or not you're relatable, whether or not you're empathic. These are things that like you can build teams around. to your comment about going from a smaller company to a bigger company, I would say that the one thing that I tell all of my smaller company friends to recognize is like if you're going to come from a director of infrastructure at a company that has 2,000 people, and you're going to come to JP Morgan Chase, you're probably going to be like a VP of a smaller team because JP Morgan Chase, a director might manage 7,000 people, whereas like the team that you managed is something that would be like at a VP ED level here at JPMC. So just being prepared, it's kind of like when you're negotiating with someone, they give you a really low price, you get insulted and walk away when they're really expecting you to negotiate with them.
Right.
Don't get insulted and walk away.
Okay.
Because there is some adjustment that people are doing in their own heads, like trying to make equivalent sizes sort of thing and normalize it out for like where your experience would fit in a larger company's experience.
Yeah.
And I'm happy, I know we're almost out of time. I'm happy to talk about
Oh, I was getting ready to ask you to be my mentor. So I was like, there's no question.
This brings me to the next thing. We all would love to stay in touch with all of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to take out our phones and turn on that whole like nearby function in LinkedIn.
Okay.
And mine will be on for the next 10 minutes, and everyone I'm accepting all comers.
Yeah. Anything
Awesome.
on your
Thank you
phone
so
nearby,
much. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I appreciate
just
you.
hit it. I do want to say thank you to everyone for coming here and to listening to all of us speak on behalf of JP Morgan and Chase. We are very thankful for you to sit here and absorb whatever information we were able to give you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here.